There we go. There we go. And you know what that all boils down to?
Please tell us.
It boils down to a decision. No, it does. It boils down to decisions. Everything in life is decisions. Everything.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
My decision to be here right now.
yeah, what you're questioning.
Questionable decision making.
I could have been outside tanning. I could have been doing a lot of other fun things, but this.
Okay, hold on. I'm Nicole Gerard from the GYST Method. This is Kirby James from the GYST Method, and today we're talking about decision making. If you couldn't tell.
Yeah, well, because it appears like we couldn't make a decision about what to talk about. This is, for me, been one of the most interesting explorations I've done. A couple of years ago, a client that they're wonderful, really great business.
The preface.
Why they're really looking at me
so
like that?
great.
They're so great, wonderful, genuine people, and they built a company out of nothing. It's making tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it's a success.
Yes, wonderful.
And their decision making worked okay when they were smaller, and we see this a lot in businesses on the way up as they scale up.
Yeah.
Is that we could all get around and we know each other really well and we understand how each other thinks, and the decisions are almost organic. You know, it flows and it happens, and then it comes to a point where there's so many people that could or should be involved, and then they're looking, say, you know, the next level managers are looking at the owner saying, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden what gets exposed is how systematic, rigorous they are at the process of making a decision, and then what they do with the decisions they've made. And we both live this.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So really for me, the thing about decision making, I guess the best place I ever had lessons in this, and you've had these too, was around life saving.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Wow, that's way back. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
5, 6 years.
At like 4.
Yeah. And no, but so you were a lifeguard. I was a
Yeah.
ski patroller.
Yeah.
And one of the things they drill into you is the decision tree,
Yes.
right? You know, can they speak? Can they breathe? You know, and you're going around airway, breathing, circulation.
Yes.
Danger of further injury to yourself, to make my ski patrol instructors happy from
Any
years gone by.
fallen, exposed wires.
That was the one.
All of it. Yeah.
There was the script.
Always that one.
Yet that training, you know, at a much younger age, it was brilliant
Yeah.
at really helping you look at what's the result I want, and what are the decisions that are required in priority order. And you know, you partook in competitions, right? First aid competitions, and that's the way the scoring sheet is laid up. Like, you know, miss airway, scenario over, like that's it, because you just killed the person.
Yeah.
And for me, decision making ever since then has never been the same.
Well, there's no checklist for making decisions in a business.
Well, there could be.
Up until now. There has not been a template, truly. And if you think about this in most businesses, now something we've talked about before is in the health sciences, first responder world.
Right. Firefighters.
Yes.
You know, paramedics, for sure.
Nurses, physicians, etc.
Call 911.
You're taught, it's part of the planned curriculum,
Right.
critical thinking skills and decision making. And decision making in a way that not only are you expected and have to make it quickly with the information you have right now,
Right.
but you need to make the decision and keep going.
And this was actually one of the really interesting things that came up in conversation last week with a colleague of mine. In a first aid rescue scenario, you make the decision. Everybody on the first aid team has to be with you on that decision, or it goes to hell in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I actually was involved in taking care of someone who'd had a neck and back injury, and one of the people in the group got tunnel vision, they call it, which is they got very focused on another injury the person had, and was neglecting that the rest of us had rallied around the fact that they had a neck injury, and they were about to start moving them around, and all the rest of us who were there were no because you're going to turn them into a paraplegic. And that's a very, very extreme example. Yet in business, the same thing happens.
It's a great metaphor. Because, just like you said, say the airway is constricted. If you're down at the bottom worried about a broken leg, and meanwhile they can't breathe, then they're going to die. The broken leg doesn't matter. Yet in business, everyone gets stuck in the minutia, and you think that this hit, like the toe thing, the nail, like when you get a hangnail.
Hangnail, yeah, they're focused on the hangnail.
Meanwhile, the person's bleeding out.
Yeah.
Or they can't breathe. So the business starts to suffer. I mean, you've seen this. We'll use the most famous example in Canada, RIM.
Yeah.
Focus on a hangnail. Meanwhile, no breathing. Right?
Yeah. Or, in their case, focus on adding a new toe. Whatever it may be. It's just, and what happens to the rest?
But that's why this comes down to decision making. And one thing that we see a lot of organizations, individuals, but as a collective,
right,
they do not understand the decision making process. And we think it's primarily because they've never been taught.
It's a big part. And actually, when you start to go through the curriculum, MBA programs and various other business programs, they will teach theories about this, but there's not actual skill development to a sufficient degree. And then the places that excel at it, first aid, rescue, military,
nurses,
right? Because they understand that the making of a decision is just a step towards action. And what they do, action is required.
Yes.
Even when sometimes, and we could use healthcare as an example, the right action is inaction. The right thing to do is nothing.
True. Yep.
Stabilize, hold, do nothing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's the right thing to do, especially if you don't know what's going on in complex cases.
Good point.
So the thought or the observation about decision making for me, I really want to bust it into these two buckets. One is decision making processes. The other is the implementation side. Decision making processes, for this client a couple of years ago, I crawled back through the last 30 years of decision making research. This is the IBM way to make decisions. That's interesting, and it has validity because they back it up with case studies. But it's been crawling through not just the stuff from McKinsey and other people. It's like, go back to the universities. Go to the people actually doing primary research that everything gets built off of.
Yes.
And it was fascinating. What was fascinating to me was there are many models. There's a relatively small number that dominate. And quite frankly, most of them aren't understandable.
Do you think it's because the methodology that's been developed, you said the IBM decision making, for example, is because that was developed for that organization with their structure, with their people, with their process?
Absolutely.
And whenever you try to transplant that over to, I don't know, Tom's hardware store, it's not going to work.
And this is what led me. At one point in my career, I was doing global benchmarking for our firm, going out and looking at the other best companies.
Right.
And I sat down one day with the a senior executive at our company, and we got talking about something that J&J was doing. And he said, we want to implant that here. And my answer to him was basically, are you nuts?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you could take an organ from something that's nothing like us and put it in here and expect it's going to go well? No, there's so much that has to be prepared. It's not doable.
Yeah.
Which actually led me to be very disillusioned by benchmarking. I found that had a lot more to do with boondoggle and Me Too, and not very much with innovative, creative customization.
But I think that's where people fall into this trap, is they want to look for a boxed solution. Here's because we're so used to templating and replicating and trying to make things easier that we're looking for something that's going to make the decision for us.
Right.
Here's step 1, step 2, step 3. If I follow it, cool. If it doesn't work, it was the process that didn't work. It wasn't us. But there was the absence of decision making. You're abdicating responsibility to this process.
So the research that I did really landed on this one technology, if you want to call it, or one approach. University generated under contract from the U.S. military, and it's called RPD.
Right.
Recognition Prime Decision Making. It was designed for Navy SEALs behind enemy lines with a mission to accomplish, and all they've got is what they brought with them or what they can find and scavenge, and the circumstances are what they are.
Yep.
Make a decision, everybody on board,
Go
get her
on.
done.
Yeah.
And the fellow I talked with last week, who's an ex-Army captain, we got talking about decision-making in business, and his view was almost identical to our view, which was, oh my gosh, it's terrible.
Right.
It becomes this massive convoluted thing. He's like, no, get to the point. That said, when a decision is big enough, you need a lot of data.
Fair. Information.
You need information and data. Yet it still can be something that moves along. It's based on reference points. Who are we? What are the rules of engagement? What are we trying to get done?
Right.
Like stuff like that. And then very quickly you can figure out what the decision is
Yeah.
and get that phase done.
Yeah.
So that...
And not get stuck along the way.
Well, a lot of people get stuck along the way. And so what ends up happening is I see a very small cadre of the powerful people, who aren't always the people with the most senior titles,
Yeah.
making decisions and acting upon them because they're the doers and the get stuff done people.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, look, Nicole's going to get that done. Okay, we'll do that. And the only reason it went that way is because the decision process was just so mired.
Yeah, it almost seems for some organizations, decisions are made by default, and it's whomever gets fed up first that things aren't getting done that just takes action. And then everyone goes, oh, okay, we'll follow what they're doing.
Or the one that actually, that one's bothersome. Sometimes you get lucky where you've got amazing people who are leading that out. But that's a heck of a thing to land on and rely on.
Yeah, it's decision by default. It's not done on purpose.
Was working at a global marketing strategy, and they were looking at brand and identity. And I was facilitating a workshop with a colleague. This pharma company had hired 6 different ad firms to bring forward different pieces of the picture. And we displayed this information across walls, filling a conference room.
And?
The end of 2 days of work was beige.
Of course, you've diluted everything.
Not only that, the people who said, ooh, that's edgy and out there, and then they just got drowned in the mass of voices. The thing that was safe and familiar became acceptable.
Right.
And then the almost $10 million they paid to have all those ideas generated looked almost exactly like the ideas they already had on the shelf.
Of course they did. They were just looking for an outside source to validate their comfort with mediocrity. Yes, it's okay to continue to do this. Great. I don't have to decide on something that I'm unsure of what the other side looks like.
And picking up on that, they don't have to be held accountable for making a decision to propose a different path. Because as much as businesses like to say we're very innovative, everybody knows that if you stray too far from beige, it's either going to be wildly successful or...
Yeah, because and I think that's actually part of it. And we should touch on the fear around making decisions simply because of the way organizations up until now have been structured, meaning you are rewarded for doing more of the same and keeping the status quo, and you are punished if you try something new and it doesn't work.
And, you know, within that, marry this with the culture of the organization.
Yeah, so can we compare that to one of the outcomes of an organization where that's most prevalent? I think that would be helpful.
And so where I see this the most in what are called passive defensive cultures.
Yeah.
Decision by committee, bureaucracy, rules, people are avoidant. Okay, they want to be liked, they don't want to be, saying, I don't want to step on her idea. And that Me Tooism and fake niceness leads to limp decision making. It's just like 6-day-old lettuce, and it's just terrible because it's a cultural inevitability.
Right.
A culture that is that passive defensive, you're not going to see effective decision making. And sadly, too many of our governmental and non-governmental institutions are plagued by this because of their culture.
Yeah, and just the way things are set up to sort of prop up the I'll just get by and do what I need to do to stay where I am, and then the person after me can worry about it. So give me a layman's terms picture. What does an organization that's passive-aggressive look like that's unable to make decisions?
So I want to differentiate. There's passive-defensive.
Sorry, yeah, you're right.
That's okay. And then there's aggressive-defensive, which we actually want to talk about separately.
Separate, yeah.
Because that's a whole different sandbox. A passive-defensive culture is one that's meek. It's everybody's nice. There's lots of functions where everybody's doesn't want to be there, but they pretend like they want to be there, and you would never miss it because you don't want to be the person who wasn't there.
Okay.
Okay. It's gossipy. And you also don't see people stepping up for their decisions. You will see the language around us as well. Actually, the team, the committee, we, they. It's not I decided that, or it's not that, the manager ran the meeting, but the manager standing up and saying, this is the call. This is very much going to be, this has to go to that committee and the other committee. And, I had this the other day talking with a service provider where I said, oh no, I can't make that decision. They're very hierarchical.
Yeah.
Now that goes over to aggressive defensive because they're very up on power and hierarchy, but you see it too in the passive defensive. These are the kinds of workplaces where really good people can find themselves working and they can't get stuff done.
That's what I was going to bring up as well. So if you're in an organization right now where you feel like you're hitting a wall with even the most basic things, small things, small decisions, like I need someone to approve this client's request and it takes 14 days. It's sort of the start, stop.
Well, two quick examples on that. One about the organization. I was invited to, propose to do work for this one organization, an academic institution. And so researchers there would apply for grant money. The grant monies would be provided by other, like federal, provincial, whoever. And so that money would be assigned to them for their research. And it took 17 signatures to release it, more than $10,000 at a time, even though they were accountable for it and they had won, if you will, a grant for $1 million. Wow. They needed 17 signatures to spend more than $10,000.
See, when you're in that type of environment, not only is it frustrating from the outside having to work with an organization like that, but you're right, even if you are a great and engaged, committed, loyal team member, at some point you're going to get fed up with not being able to get your work done. Can't get your work done.
Right.
Because of all of the barriers, all the bureaucracy, all of the red tape. But eventually you get fed up because you want to do good work and you can't.
And that's
frustrating.
And that entire system came out of a scandal that had happened there forever ago. The board of governors or board of regents got freaked out by the publicity exposure, so they created a hyper-controlling culture
where no one can make a decision.
And then it's safer, and it's an illusion because anybody who's really smart is figuring out how to get around that system,
and they do.
And that's now you've just created a mess.
Yeah.
So it's distrust. So let me give you a personal example on the personal side of that. Colleague of mine, top flight in their profession, working in the private sector. They, through life circumstances, needed to change their job, not so much travel, not so many hours, because of a divorce. Went and worked in the government sector. And 3 months in, going for their performance review, the 3 months performance review, the boss sat them down and said, so wow, you're amazing, and knock it off.
Wow.
Because you're creating a problem for me. Because the unionized system I work within, I can't recognize you for what you're doing. And worse than that, you're causing a problem for me because you're showing up just how bad most of the team is.
Oh.
And since I can't do anything about that, you need to slow down. And she's like, I don't slow down.
I don't have that speed. Yeah.
I go as I go.
Yeah.
To which he said, then fine, here's the secret deal we're making. You're taking Fridays off, but you're going to say you're working from home on Fridays, and I don't want to see any email from you on Friday. Because you get more done in 4 days than these guys get done in a week and a half, but I can live with it, and all I can do, because I can't buck the system, is give you Fridays off.
Good for that leader.
Yes and no, right? Because it speaks to just what a broken system.
Yes,
that
but
place
good
was.
for them for recognizing that one of the things that would actually bring her joy within that constraint might have been an extra day off every week, might have been what. And here's something we do need to get into, the difference between fair and equal in a business setting.
Yeah,
we'll get into that another time.
That's another time.
So fundamentally, let's bring this back a little bit. So when it comes to decision making, the inability to make decisions and move forward is something that we see that cripples individuals and organizations all the time.
All the time.
Which is why it's important to understand how to make a decision, but even more important, understand what comes after making that decision.
And what comes after the decision is, and this is something that I've built in actually for clients, is the decisions made.
Right.
I think there's a really good, healthy place for a reality check. Call it a sniff test. It's like, so, okay, this is the decision, but really? Is this us? Is this going to fit? Can we do this? And it's to allow an organization not to give them, if you will, a way to always back off. But it's a way not to commit themselves to something that really, even though it might look on paper to be the best decision, it isn't a decision that they are likely to be able to implement with any chance of success, which is actually part of the process.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, that's part of the process, yet sometimes people get pretty excited. And optimism comes up, like financial forecasts when you're doing strategy sessions, right? It's like, oh yeah, we can invent X percent more. Anyways.
Yes.
So, but on the decision side, then it's not to say that it now is just project management, because project management is a real and important skill and asset for an organization. It's that last little bit before project management begins, which is the translation of the decision into a plan that can be implemented. And that plan has to have all the key requirements.
Yes.
Who, what, where, when, why, and how much money.
And how much.
How much money.
Yeah.
And, critical path and all kinds of techniques for project management are there. But that, to me, is the last stage of decision making, is don't hand your decision to the project management group yet. You need to translate that based on what you learned as you made the decision to help organize that decision to move into the implementation phase.
Okay, so like we always like to do, we're going to close this off because there are other topics in decision making we need to go deeper on,
so
right?
much.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of the average individual and the ability to make decisions and stick to them, what would a practical piece of advice be that if someone's watching this now, it's a Sunday night, they're going to work on Monday morning, getting better at making decisions? How can one just get better at making decisions?
3 quick things.
3, perfect.
Sure, I can distill anything down to 3. 3 quick things. The first thing is understand what the heck you're trying to get done. What does the end of the rainbow look like? Okay, it's not a rainbow, it's across the road or across the room. Just understand the result you're trying to create and never, ever, ever lose sight of that.
Great.
And importantly, understand why. Why is it across the street, not across the room? Or why is it to the end of the rainbow? If you don't understand the why you're making the decision, you're instantly lost.
Right.
Second thing is to make sure that you understand what you need to know.
As many variables at the time as possible?
Not as many, because that's where the overwhelming and...
Yeah, I was going to say, with all the data we have now, there's too much.
Right. So really it's more, the way I do this actually is, what are like the top 6 or 7 things that would affect your decision? Cost, ease of implementation, likelihood to get us across the road, like a small list of things, but they're categories or aspects that you would almost use as a scorecard to rate your decision.
Okay, an everyday decision?
An everyday decision. I do that all the time. I was buying espresso coffee the other day. It's like, what do I want? I know the kind of coffee I want. I'm looking at it. Price mattered. Accessibility mattered. Okay. Do I believe in the brand? Like there was a small, and now I'm going over the shelf and I ended up with
Got it.
this, right? Because it's like, no, I don't buy that brand. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, I got two choices. Yes, no, not that one because. And was this my optimal choice? No. My optimal choice wasn't available at the store. I needed coffee now. Okay, so my ideal wasn't available. I was just doing it now. So I worked within the constraints.
Perfect. Love that.
And that would be the last thing I would say.
Okay.
Understand the constraints. People too often, I find, make decisions that are idealistic.
Oh, yes.
But ignore constraints. I actually did a recording on this, I think, last year. We live in the city of Toronto. The constraint for urban development is a lake. Real big lake. And so that as a constraint, well, they've built out into the lake.
Yep.
But if you decide to build out into the lake, now you have to include that in the decision. Constraints, to me, are actually the energy for creativity.
Yeah.
I want this. This is what I've got, and this is what I can or can't do.
Yes.
Okay, so what am I? Okay,
How can I get creative?
Yeah, I'm going to get real creative right now. I have coffee. Is it my ideal coffee? No. But I had my coffee when I wanted it because I allowed myself to be creative in coming up with a solution and picking something I never would have normally picked.
And so in sticking with that decision then, using the same analogy, the decision that you made to purchase that particular product and you being okay with the outcome for the next month that bag will last.
Exactly.
You need to be okay with the outcome. You cannot walk into your kitchen every single day and be pissed off that
what horrible coffee. Blah.
No, and that is also part of it. It's being okay with the decision.
Absolutely.
I love that example. Everyone can understand that example.
Right. And so it just this morning I was talking about this and it's like, this is not my ideal coffee. It's not bad and it'll do until I finish the bag because I'm not going to throw it out.
Precisely.
Right? Live with the consequences of it. Just when you buy in, that's it. You've bought in.
Perfect.
Until you're ready to make a new decision.
Perfect. I love that. All right.
Right.
We will go further into decision making because it is it's a very large portion of what we do with organizations and helping them understand how to make decisions in a business context, organizationally speaking. We will dive deeper in that, but for now, I hope everyone has the right coffee and is having a good day. In the meantime, I'm Nicole Gerard from the GYST Method.
And I'm Kirby James. Send us questions, comments. We'd love to hear.
Until next time.
Thanks.